Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. It's my great pleasure to welcome back to Live on ServiceNow, our technology partner, Snyk, um, Snyk Security. We have a reprise of the presenters from previously because there's new and exciting integration material for us to share with you today. My name is Aaron Bennett. I lead partnerships here at ServiceNow for Tech Workflows. And we can advance one slide. I'd like to welcome Mark Nichols and Akila Menagoli from ServiceNow. Mark is from Snyk, to co-present today on the topic that we have for you, the new integrations. Just very quickly to flash our safe harbor notice, maybe some forward-looking statements today, so take that as you will. Also, for any who go ahead. Also, for any who'd like to join future Live on ServiceNow sessions, we have this QR code that you can scan from your phone, or you can visit the ServiceNow community at community.servicenow.com and click on our events tab. Go ahead. So finally, we will save time at the end for Q&A. We may or may not answer questions in the flow of the presentation. So please do add your questions to the chat or to the Q&A section in the webinar. We'll take them in either format. And we'll make sure to read off those questions for purpose of the recording, so that if there's any need that we can make sure that that content's available for afterwards. The session today will also be recorded and stored on our community YouTube channel, and will be attached to the blog around this content today. And we'd like to ask if you'd like to be contacted for further assistance afterwards on the new integrations. So we'll get to that probably halfway through. With that, I'll step aside and welcome Mark and Akila to take it away today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron and Akila, and thanks for the team for the folks for joining us today. We're really excited to share with you some updates to our Snyk integration with ServiceNow. There's a lot that's been going on here, and we'll cover a few things like the business challenge that we see our customers facing in terms of managing risk in their organization. We'll chat briefly about the background of the partnership between Snyk and ServiceNow. We'll cover a little bit of our app vuln response refresher and updates. We've released a new version of our app vulnerability response integration that I think you'll find very interesting. We'll also talk about the Snyk vulnerability intelligence for our SBOM app. We'll take a look at a quick case study, and then we'll go into a demo. We have some information about timelines for milestones coming up if that's something that you're interested in. So the real challenge today for organizations is being able to identify what their application risk is in their software supply chain. Not only do we have our internally developed apps, but we have the apps that we've purchased, and we need to know when there's something that happens in the organization from a vulnerability standpoint, how that's impacting our organization, and also how do we respond quickly to the newly discovered high-risk vulnerabilities that are needed to protect the organization that I'm a part of. At Snyk, we take a look at that from stepping back at a higher level in terms of where those vulnerabilities are coming from. For a couple of years, we've already known that the challenge for developers and the DevSecOps community is that it just doesn't work to stop your development process in order to check security. It's something that has to be integrated into the process from beginning to end. And the more that we can provide developers the tools in order to address their security challenges, the more effective and efficient they will be in producing great applications. They'll be able to move quicker. Another challenge that's happening right now in the world of application and vulnerabilities is the fact that we've expanded the scope of our code, and now we're including what's happening in the cloud, and the fact that that even what's going into the cloud now is being controlled by code. It's a whole new level of exposure in terms of risk for the organization. And so it's very important for us to understand the role, and how do we address the risk associated with that. And then finally, one of our C-level officers today said, this was the year of AI. Everybody knows about AI and the impact that it's having. And we're very familiar with the fact that AI is going to change the world for everything, especially for developers. But the challenge is what if AI is producing insecure code, and how is that going to add risk to your organization? And so the solution that we're going to talk about today addresses all of those challenges in bringing together the story of Snyk and ServiceNow and how you manage that risk for your company. Snyk's approach for the first part of this is making it easier for security teams and developers to work together to find and fix, prevent, monitor, and manage those vulnerabilities as early in the process as possible. Now, the managed part is the part that's going to really come in handy as we talk about our integration for ServiceNow. And in terms of the framework of why this is important, or the partnership between Snyk and ServiceNow, first of all, ServiceNow is a Snyk customer. We're very proud to have ServiceNow using our products, that they've integrated into their processes, so much so that they became an investor in Snyk. They're part of Snyk's advisory board. We have been a member of their technology program since February of 22. And all of the integrations that we've done, or all the work we've done in our integrations, has been in coordination between Snyk, ServiceNow, and the clients for both organizations. We've gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of the work that we've done is based on what customers have asked for. So much so that I'd say that the SCA, or the source code analysis data model that's being used in the app-vuln module within ServiceNow has been influenced by Snyk, and also the SBOM data model. In fact, we were launch partners for the SCA offering and the SBOM offering by ServiceNow, and we're very thankful and proud to be a part of those two launches. And some of the key outcomes of this partnership is something very interesting. We have 2 certified apps now in the ServiceNow Store that customers can begin to use. The 1.0 version of the vulnerability response module was introduced initially in January of 23, and we had an updated release of that in October 26 of this year. And we also released the Snyk Vulnerability Intelligence for ServiceNow SBOM on November the 7th. And so with that, in order to put the integrations in the context of solving this problem of addressing risk for the organization as far as applications are concerned, I'm going to turn it over to Akila Managoli, and she's going to talk about what application vulnerability response represents in ServiceNow, and then we'll talk about how the Snyk integration works in that world.
Thank you, Mark. To those of you who don't know, the application vulnerability response module of ServiceNow, it's part of the broader vulnerability response, and it provides a central location to manage and respond to vulnerabilities across applications. So one of the common problems security teams have today is lack of visibility into application vulnerability information. So basically, no landscape awareness. So by defining the business applications using ServiceNow's application portfolio management, security organizations can have landscape awareness. Like, what are my crown jewel applications? How many of them are external facing? How many of them have PCI data? So on and so forth, right? And the application portfolio management combined with application vul response, the goal is to provide a single pane of glass for security organizations to understand the security posture of all the application in my environment. And which, we can use the application context and the criticality and severity of the vulnerabilities coming in from different scanners. And not only that, we can use this information to share with development teams for remediation, or the senior executives and the risk managers based on the need of the hour. And you might be familiar that most organizations use testing tools like DAST, SAST, software composition analysis, which is known as SCA. And all of these tools provide different ways to find weaknesses during runtime, or by examining source code or vulnerabilities exposed and open source components. Using these multiple tools, testing tools also creates a new layer of complexity for security teams to collect data points, to identify relevant development teams, and to determine the next steps on how to remediate them. So application vulnerability response supports importing all of these type of scanning like DAST, SAST, SCA, and also manual pen testing. And not only that, you can integrate with many of the partners out there and ingest the findings to the AVR. And the ServiceNow Snyk integration that Mark was talking about, the version which was released last year, it supports bringing in the open source vulnerabilities, basically the SCA findings into the AVR module. And what this integration supported was the ability to bring projects from Snyk into ServiceNow as application releases and scanned application. And we could bring in issues from Snyk as ServiceNow vulnerabilities and application vulnerable items and packages. And ability to link the application release and scanned application using the CI lookup rules that's part of the application VR, and provide a user-friendly dashboard for data visualization. And you might be like, you might have already given it a try. And I want to give it to Mark back to hear the exciting news of what's the updated version looks like today, Mark.
Well, thank you, Akila. Before I go forward with that, I want to take a step back here, and I like to make webinars like this more conversational. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask any questions that you're not already prepared to answer. But isn't the application vulnerability response module within ServiceNow part of the SecOps environment?
You're right. Yes, it's
Okay.
part of the broader security operations. Yes.
Yeah. So within security operations, I know that there's a vulnerability response capability within ServiceNow, and from a market standpoint, in terms of where especially large enterprises are going, is this one of the most important or fastest growing parts of ServiceNow right now? Is this a big emphasis for organizations?
Absolutely, absolutely. You said it right, Mark. Because we'll go in the use case studies. We'll deep dive into the Log4j and the SolarWinds and how that has impacted organizations and how many hours have gone into just to even find out where the risk is still existing, right? Like to even know what should I fix. So things like that, using application vulnerability response, we can actually and Snyk together, the
Yeah.
power companies together, how they can actually reduce that time to resolve when you're thrown into issues. So yeah, it's one of the fastest growing today for sure.
Yeah. I remember the days when we didn't talk very much about open source code and how it impacted the organization and the risk that's associated with that. And everybody was just concerned about, whether or not I was writing a buffer overflow, vulnerability in my code. But now, as much as 80 or 90% of the package that's, 80 to 90% of the code that's incorporated in releases now, I understand is using open source libraries, open source packages. So yeah, here's the part to what's new. I mean, it's great that Snyk's been able to have this integration now for a while. But there's some really exciting things here in what this new integration to do. Of course, I'm going to start on the right side of this screen here. We added support for Tokyo, Utah, and Vancouver. I think we already had Tokyo, so it gives customers to be the ability to be on the latest version. Is one of the great pieces of feedback we had from our customers is that they wanted additional filtering options in determining what flowed from Snyk into ServiceNow. And so we added a whole list of things like, one customer used different repositories for software source code management. They had some Bitbucket, some GitHub, and they wanted to be able to filter on which one of those were brought into the ServiceNow environment. We added some CWE information from Snyk into ServiceNow. We added the ability to close AVITs. Now that's the application vulnerable items that get created when an issue comes into Snyk. I'm sorry, into ServiceNow when a project gets deleted from Snyk. But the biggest one, the thing that seems to be the most exciting to the customers we've talked to, is what we call bi-directional capabilities. And from what I've heard, I think we're one of the first integration partners with ServiceNow to have a bi-directional capability. And what that means, and we'll demo this here in just a little bit, but if there's a developer or an AppSec manager working in the AppVuln module within ServiceNow, they can define an exception process, or they can say ignore this issue. And that flows back into Snyk so that developers that are working in the Snyk UI know that they can ignore an issue. And we'll take a look at that a little bit more. But it's pretty interesting now that this level of integration that we've incorporated. So the
Mhm.
other issue
Yeah,
today, oh,
but
go ahead.
the only thing, yeah, I just wanted to add here is I know that's part of it was part of the first release too, but the Snyk score also comes in, to ServiceNow, and it really helps to prioritize, and you can make use to drive the remediation and which one is my priority, right? You can make that feed into the risk score already.
Well, oh, that's great. You just took us back to what the core problem is what we're trying to
Yeah.
solve today is understanding risk in the organization that's been introduced by applications. I'm glad you brought that up. Now, the next thing in terms of the challenge of open source packaging and how you manage that is what's happened with the world of SBOMs. I remember years ago that SBOM was not even an acronym that anybody knew anything about. And so tell us, Akila, about the SBOM offering within ServiceNow and what this represents.
Yeah, this is really an exciting time for ServiceNow right now. I'll tell you why, Mark. Because the with the Vancouver platform release, and we are a few months into it already. See, the ServiceNow platform has released a new application called SBOM, which is nothing but software bill of materials. So what is it, right? So you might be familiar with open source. You already know that open source software has become the commonplace for application development today. But it also introduced, it not only can we know that it introduces security risks. And ServiceNow, right in time, has introduced software bill of materials, which is called as SBOM module, to easily process and ingest software components inventory, gain comprehensive insights into its presence within the business application, assess security risk, and drive the response workflows using our own platform. And by extending the centralized visibility for third-party and homegrown application, SBOM gives customers the ability to more easily manage cyber risk that accompany with the open source software. And what is SBOM? Many of us are used to going and grabbing energy bar from a store, and when you pick I'm just giving an example of an energy bar here. When you pick an energy bar, you tend to turn the bar around and look for the ingredients, right? It has what all it has. And what does it help me do is it helped me to understand what it contains and what can I consume it? For example, if I'm allergic to nut, if it says it has nuts, I can make a risk-based decision on that. So similarly, having SBOMs, which is an inventory for your applications and the risk exposed with that, it allows you to make risk-based decision. You cannot protect what you don't know. It all starts with inventorying things. And not only that, today a lot of federal agencies like US and European Union, they're mandating to provide SBOM if your software is ending up in their environment. And we talked about a little bit on the SolarWinds and breaches like Log4j. They've definitely increased the need for SBOM. So that really tells us the story of why SBOM is required.
Now, Akila, I got to get a little bit more clarification here. Did you say that ServiceNow is only supporting SBOMs for my internally developed applications?
No, actually, I'm going to deep dive into it in the next slide, Mark.
Okay.
Thanks for the
Good,
question.
good. I
Yeah.
like it when I ask a leading question that takes us to the
Right?
next slide.
Yes. So what do we do? How do we support, right? So today, if you have your inventory already with you, so you can ingest that to ServiceNow platform. There are two ways you can ingest. You can use the REST APIs that we have already exposed the REST API that you can call, or you can upload manually. And if you're familiar with SBOM, there are multiple formats it comes with. And the current version that's out there supports Cyclone GX format. And we are working on supporting the SPDX format in the near future, right? In fact, even next year. So this actually, as you see there, it supports the commercial softwares, legacy applications, OT or medical devices, firmware, whatever is in your inventory, all of that is supported today. Most of it is supported today. And once you upload, the next step is to assess. We help you assess the risk of the open source components coming through the SBOM to make and to do that, along with ingesting the data, you can also make use of the integration that provides the security intelligence like Snyk, right? So there are other integrations also available on the ServiceNow Store, but I'm going to be focused on ServiceNow and Snyk integration, how that enriches and helps you to assess better. That's going to be my, I'll complete the workflow here and then I'll jump into that. And once you basically, our goal is to provide a single source of truth for your security posture. And that's part of the assessment. And once you assess, we help you respond. So what you can do is you can create findings for the components that are abandoned or stale, or for the vulnerabilities where the exploit exists. So you can have the rules created within the SBOM application for which you can create the AVITs, which Mark talked about, the application vulnerability items back in your application vul response module. And then you can action them, and you can use the full all the features that comes with the application vul response, like assignment rules and all of the prioritization, all of that put into the AV that got created and drive the response workflow from there. So basically, SBOMs give customers the ability to more easily manage cyber risk that can accompany open source software. With the latest solution, the Snyk Vulnerability Intelligence for SBOM app, Snyk brings in more timely and comprehensive and actionable package vulnerability intelligence to SBOM stored in ServiceNow. So the SecOps and AppSec teams can be confident that the SBOM stored in ServiceNow offer a highly accurate understanding of the risk within the enterprise software supply chain. So together with Snyk and ServiceNow, we help SecOps and AppSec teams to better guide the developers so they can efficiently prioritize and remediate vulnerabilities in the components identified in the SBOMs. Does that help, Mike?
Yes, that's very clear. Thank you.
Okay.
All righty, so let's take a look. There's a Snyk vulnerability intelligence for SBOM, and I think the best way to show this is to demonstrate it. But I'll kind of give you the overview real quickly here. Number one, it gives you the ability to identify and track new high-risk vulnerabilities. So when you import those SBOMs into ServiceNow, there's, of course, in some cases, you can fairly easily identify if there's a vulnerability associated with a particular package from the NVD database, but that doesn't really tell you everything that you need to know if you're going to address the risk in your organization. The second step is to understand how and where to apply remediation, and that's where Snyk comes in, and we'll show you what that means. For example, whether or not there's a package that you're using that has a simple upgrade, whether or not it's fixable, or you're going to have to re-architect some things. It supports the capability of your compliance and helps inform your governance, regulatory, and compliance reporting. So especially if you're a financial institution now, there's a lot of rules around tracking your SBOMs and knowing what the risk is associated with your SBOMs and where the risk is within your organization. And Snyk provides the foundation for that. And then the last element here is that not only are we doing the projects that you already have in Snyk, but you have the ability to import SBOMs from anywhere. If it's defining an open source package that's in a platform that we support, then you'll automatically get this information that I was referring to. And so it spans, it works for Snyk and non-Snyk customers. So that's a great thing about this integration. So let's take a case study and a demo that we're all familiar with, and that's the Log4j example. If you remember a couple of years ago, all of a sudden this vulnerability was announced in this package that a lot of us were using called Log4j. It was all over the place. So if you were an organization that was developing your own applications, well, of course you were using Log4j, and that's the first thing that you wanted to know is how many applications that I developed are using Log4j. And then the second thing is, what about the purchased applications? If you remember the story as that was unfolding, that story and the previous one for people who were using a product from SolarWinds is that they had implemented SolarWinds, and then within that, if they had looked at the SBOM with SolarWinds, they would have known that the vulnerability was in a package that they were using from an open source repository. And so what you need to know right away is what needs to be fixed, which applications need to be addressed, how to fix those vulnerabilities, and which system is at the highest risk. And that's what the integration between Snyk and ServiceNow is all about. Snyk identified the what and the how piece of this, and ServiceNow provided the context on which to fix first. And I didn't add this bullet. I need to go back and edit this slide and add this in. And that is that ServiceNow provides the framework for tracking the workflows and the reporting of who's been assigned the fix that needs to occur, and how many are still open, and are we making progress on reducing those? Those are all done with the dashboards.
Yep.
And so,
and
yeah.
along with that, you can do exception management as well in the vulnerability response, Mark. So
Oh, yeah, that's right. Like we won't fix this. This is
Yeah.
we've abandoned this application. Let's go on to the next one. Yeah, that's a great point. So recently, Snyk did a customer value study. We asked our customers, look, we want to make sure that we're doing what you need. Come back and tell us what are we doing for you? Does it really make sense? And here's some of the statistics on the right side of this screen that our customers gave us when you get into a vulnerability management program like you could have with Snyk and ServiceNow. 16 hours per vulnerability, improved efficiency in resolving things, a savings of about a little more than $1.5 million per organization due to time savings. That means that developers didn't have to spend as much time trying to figure out how to fix a vulnerability because they had that information available. They knew, with Snyk, you can know which version you need to go to and what changes will be required to your applications to fix the vulnerabilities. They said that it was almost $3.5 million due to risk avoidance. And the pace at which they were able to fix critical vulnerabilities was almost 5 times as great in 2023 as it was in 2022. Those are measurable results that our customers have reported in using Snyk. And the Snyk and ServiceNow integration gives you the ability to manage that entire process. So now we're into the fun stuff. Let's do a demo here. And let me make sure that, I knew it. I got expired, Akila. I'm gonna have to come back and log into this. But
Oh,
before I do that, let me come back here and just talk about real quickly the Snyk overview of, in this case, for my particular demo user that we have established here, I've connected to a bunch of software repositories. We have this traditional one that we use for demos called the Snyk, the Java Goof application that has a lot of vulnerabilities. And so those come in with different projects, and within a project, you can drill down into this. And within this particular manifest for this Java project, here it is. There's the log4j vulnerability. And this is the information that you would get if you're using the Snyk user interface. And of course, this information is available through APIs. But what we're here to talk about today is how we bring that into ServiceNow. And so let me get logged back in here real quickly with my two-factor authentication. All righty, it came up first to my SBOM dashboard, but we talked first about application and vulnerability response. And so the first screen that I want to show you is this is what it looks like when you've imported your vulnerabilities from ServiceNow, I'm sorry, from Snyk into ServiceNow. We automatically create AVITs. And by the way, that integration is a configurable in terms of how frequently it does it. By default, it comes out of the box that we update these vulnerabilities on a nightly basis. And then we also update projects and organizations from Snyk into ServiceNow on a weekly basis, but that's configurable by you. And we also import if a vulnerability was fixed in your code and it shows up in Snyk that it's fixed, we update that and close the AVIT for you automatically in this process. So you see that these are some of the AVITs that have been imported from Snyk. And the first thing I'll call out here is that we've also imported the Snyk priority score. That's Snyk's process of analyzing the level of how much you should pay attention to this particular vulnerability. And as you can see, the log4j are all pretty high from our perspective from a priority score standpoint. But the next column here, risk score, is something that you define as a ServiceNow user, where you go in and say, okay, if it's over this priority score from Snyk, then we need to say that this is a high risk item for us. It can be critical or high. And I'm just going to flip over real quickly to this vulnerability calculators. We ship with a default Snyk calculator that you can go in and modify yourself on this risk rule, where we're calculating and we're saying that a Snyk score between 900 and 1,000 is a number one critical, 700 to 899 is a 75, and 400 to 699 is a 50. So let's go back to those vulnerabilities here and take a look at some more interesting.
as you said, it's totally configurable, right? If there are any other, scores or any other factors they want to take into consideration before defining the risk score, they can do so. They can customize it and add other features. But we have faith. I mean, this is totally vetted. The Snyk priority score is already vetted, and it already has taken a lot of factors into consideration. It makes the life easy for the security teams and the AppSec teams.
All right. Well, that's good. Now, here's a topic that I don't get into very much, Akila, and that's the workflow capability. And I see here that I've got I can probably can I create a workflow to assign it automatically to a group or to an individual?
Correct. So the recommendation is, I mean, typically, it's to assign it to a group. That way, there are many people in a development team. In generally, our organization has many people within a given group. That way, they can pick up or they can reassign to who can take what load, right? And all this, the assignment group can be driven. They're all customizable. So it's part of the configuration for the AVR. So you can define based on the discovered application, who is the owner of that application. You can look into different factors like that and create rules. And that way, the moment the AVIT is created, it goes to that group and gets assigned to them to work that.
Well, I can tell you that it's a good thing that this is a demo instance because this one's assigned to me. And if it's up to me to fix vulnerabilities, we're going to be in trouble here. But let me drill down a little bit further into one of these AVITs here, and let's see some more information. Now, this is where it gets really, really helpful here. We've got a summary of the vulnerability, the risk score. But look at this. We've got a link that takes us back to that project within Snyk. So if you don't have enough information here, you can go get additional information from Snyk about this, learn more about this type of vulnerability, show more detail about this. And then we also have Snyk has this marvelous database about security regarding vulnerabilities. And so there's a link here that gives you a lot more detail about this. And really, our heart at Snyk is that we want developers to get better at development so that they're not, so that they understand vulnerabilities and how they got created, so that when they're writing code, that's why we have the Snyk Learn capability. But this link, we're right here within the AVIT, takes you to that. And then here's that key information. This is what you need to upgrade to resolve this issue.
So
All right.
it's a single pane of glass view for a developer. Like when they get into the AVIT, they know what's the problem. They get additional context. They also know the recommendation that how to fix that.
Now that brings up an interesting point, Akila, because I'll tell you that I think that a lot of organizations think about this in the context of, okay, it's going to be just my AppSec managers that are working from ServiceNow, but there's a real opportunity here for developers if they choose to work from this environment too, so that they can track their information. And let's go back to one of these AVITs here, because this gives us an opportunity to talk about the bi-directional capability. So as a developer, I can go in here and request an exception or even an AppSec manager, and I can say, let's defer this for a particular period of time, or I have a reason for my deferral. One of them is a mitigating control in place. And, if this particular AVIT is, I may want to set this aside for right now. It's not a higher priority item because until this date, till we get some other things that are more critical fixed, this may be on an internal VPC in your Amazon cloud. And you know this, but we may not have that information available when we're before at the Snyk level. And so anyway, there's a lot of capabilities and functionality here. Let's go take a look at what's the vulnerability filtering capability. And I mentioned this a little bit in my earlier presentation, but here's where we define the information that's going to be pulled in from the integration. And quite honestly, a lot of organizations are overwhelmed with so many vulnerabilities. They may choose to only bring in items that that have a minimum priority score, or they may say that we only want to bring in critical or high and critical vulnerabilities, so that they're having a manageable world to work with in this environment, and they don't feel quite so overwhelmed. And so this will take me out to this page right here. And so we know that every CISO loves a good dashboard, and probably a lot of AppSec managers do, but this is a dashboard that gives you the ability to see how things are progressing in your organization with vulnerabilities. Yeah. And so I think these are, and then here's a summary. I've got 106 critical, I've got 912 high, and 242 low. So that's very helpful information in figuring out what's going on with your organization.
Yeah, and just to call it, this is demo data, so don't go by the numbers here, but
That's
that's
right. This is
very,
a
very,
demo environment.
yeah.
So, all righty, let's go ahead and poke in here to the SBOM world. So
Yes.
I will start with the SBOM workplace. And so what I've done here is I've imported some SBOM. And two of these are from projects that are what I'd call internal projects that we play with a lot here at Snyk. This is our to-do list web struts SBOM, and then one of our Java Goof projects that I've imported. But I've also imported a third-party application. It's kind of a fairly well-known one called Keycloak. I've never used it before, but look at this. Here's the interesting analysis. In the Keycloak application, there's 903 components. In Goof, there's 545. And here's a summary of the vulnerabilities that are associated with it. And look here, some AVITs have already been created automatically based on the information that's been imported here. Let's go here and take a look
A step
at.
back here, Mark. I think what I want to highlight here is the moment you come to this dashboard, you can see how many bombs have been ingested. The first step, you see all bomb entities, there are 3. That shows how many bombs you've already ingested or imported to ServiceNow platform or to SBOM application. And not only that, if some bomb entities don't have vulnerabilities, you don't have to worry which ones has. The second tab, which says bomb entities with vulnerabilities, that shows how many of them have vulnerabilities, right? And you brought up the good point about AVITs here. So when you ingest a bomb entity, you have the AVIT creation rule. So you can create your own rules. Hey, do you want to make it actionable to your development teams and AppSec teams? So you can create those rules and create AVIT back in the application while response module for these entities which have vulnerabilities exposed and exploit exists in them.
All righty. Let's see. I'm going to go over here to the SBOM library. So this is actually a list of the vulnerabilities that have been identified in all the SBOMs. And so check this out. Snyk has said this is our version of that vulnerability. It's an improper input validation. We're saying that for us, the severity is a level 4. And there you go. Is this fixable or not fixable? And here's the instructions, the remediation notes. Upgrade the package to this version in order to fix this vulnerability. That's incredibly helpful information as you're going to decide this stuff. And so let me go down here to this particular screen. I've got all these set as my favorites. Here's another way of looking at information. Actually, I think the last one was a little bit better. And let me go down here to the component vulnerability fix information. So this gives you more details about what the component was, where the vulnerability was identified, the Snyk score, and which version it's fixed in. And this is, of course, the source that this information came from Snyk.
Yeah.
So a lot of good, helpful information there. Now, I haven't gone through and looked at any of the AVITs that were created by my SBOM workflow because I don't understand my workflow very well, but that's something for another day for that you can work out with your ServiceNow team to get that worked out. All righty. I see Daniel's made a very nice comment that this is helpful. I'm glad to hear that. Akila, do you have anything else to add for today?
Yeah, if you go back to the SBOM, the previous slide you were on, workspace, SBOM workspace, correct, that's the one.
Okay, yeah, the workspace.
You click on the second, yeah, that's the AVIT creation rule.
There we go.
Correct. So that helps you, as I think we haven't created anything here for the demo purposes, but this is where you create, if you just click on new, we can just give a quick understanding of how you can create a new AVIT. So you can pick, you can name it, what rule it is, and you can pick the conditions as to on what component and what vulnerability you want to create the AVITs for. So once this rule is created, based on the SBOM information we already have, it correlates this rule and creates the AVITs. That's the downstream workflow right here. Yeah.
There you go. That looks pretty easy. I think I can probably even figure out how to create one of these AVIT rules. So I'll have to give that a try.
Yep. And as you said, this is the first version, and both there are a lot more features already in pipeline and planned to release in the coming year. I think, and also for the Snyk SBOM integration as well. Like both will have many more features coming in the early next year to mid next year.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're not going to get into today, but I can tell you that Snyk and ServiceNow together have roadmaps for both of these things, for both of our integrations and both of these capabilities within ServiceNow, and things are only going to get better here. So, and we love feedback from customers on all of this. We that's what drives our growth and our direction in this is making life better for customers. So solving their problems.
Absolutely.
All righty. I think I've got a little wrap-up slide here, and let me pop this back out to the slideshow capability. The goal here is that you, as the customer, have complete visibility, and that you have the ability to manage the process, making good decisions by analyzing the risk to your organization and overall lowering your risk exposure. And that's what the Snyk and the ServiceNow integrations do, is it provides the capability to do these things and solve. And let's go back to the first problem, Makila. The question is, and actually, let me, I'm going to go up here on the slides and see if we answered the question for today. And the
Yeah.
question, the question of the day was, how do I manage application risk exposure in my software supply chain? That's not just the things that I've developed internally, it's the things that I've purchased. And we've shown how we can do that today with the SBOM capability and looking at application risk for the applications that we developed internally. And how do I respond quickly to newly discovered high-risk vulnerabilities? We talked about Log4j and the fact that this capability gave you what you needed to answer the questions of which pieces of software or applications were vulnerable and what do I need to do about it. And so I think we've covered that today.
Yeah, I think my ending thought will be, like, as I said, together, Snyk and ServiceNow, they really help the SecOps and AppSec teams to better guide developers so they can effectively prioritize and remediate vulnerabilities in the components identified in their SBOMs. So that kind of summarizes both applications here.
All righty, great. Well, with that, folks, I'm going to go ahead and take a look. Let's see, there's been a question here about whether or not the slides will be available. Yes, absolutely, the slides will be available. And we look forward to helping you. Be sure and contact your ServiceNow rep or your Snyk rep if you have any questions. These things are available from the ServiceNow Store. If you go to store.servicenow.com and you search for Snyk, S-N-Y-K, you'll be able to find these integrations. You can start today with the SCA integration, and if you can initiate the process for SBOM from the ServiceNow Store, and we look forward to helping you with those things.
Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Mark. I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation, co-presenting it with you.
Me too, Akila. It was great. Talk to you later.
Yeah, bye.